Time froze as Kiana Rhodes' hand shot up to catch the white boy's fist midair. The hallway fell silent, shock rippling across pale faces as this new black girl, with her box braids, melanin-rich skin, and unwavering stance, dared to defend someone. In that crystallized moment, Kiana saw it all. How quickly their eyes shifted from seeing a protector to labeling her the aggressor. How her blackness transformed her defense into threat. The calculus was familiar. A black girl standing her ground would always be read as the angry instigator, regardless of who threw the first punch. Before we continue this powerful journey, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city and country in the comments below. We're building a global community that celebrates Black excellence and resilience across borders. Hit that subscribe button now to join our movement of authentic storytelling. 3 hours earlier, dawn had barely broken over the horizon as Kiana sat cross-legged on a cushion in her bedroom, eyes closed in meditation while her father's skilled fingers worked through her hair. The familiar scent of shea butter and coconut oil filled the air, mingling with the soft notes of Nina Simone playing from an old record player, her mother's favorite. Remember what Grandma Ade always said? Solomon Rhodes spoke rhythmically as his fingers created neat parts for the next braid. Our hair carries our history. Every twist, every curl has survived centuries of attempts to tame it. I know, Baba, Kiana replied, her shoulders relaxing under the comfort of this ritual they'd shared since her mother passed 3 years ago. Her father had learned to braid from watching her mother, determined that their daughter would never lose this connection to her heritage. You're starting a new school today, the 4th in 2 years. His voice carried no judgment, only concern. I know why you fought those boys at Westfield. You were protecting Tasha. But I know what you're gonna say, Kiana interrupted. I need to be more careful. I need to control my anger. I need to remember that as the only black girl in the room, I'll be the one they blame. Solomon's hands paused briefly before continuing the intricate pattern. The techniques I've taught you come from warriors across the diaspora. Our ancestors didn't develop these arts so we could start fights, but so we could protect our communities when necessary. He secured the end of a braid. The wisdom is knowing the difference. Their modest apartment told the story of a family deeply connected to their roots. African masks adorned walls alongside framed photos of black martial artists throughout history. Bookshelves overflowed with volumes by Morrison, Baldwin, Adichie, and Hooks. On a small altar in the corner, a photograph of Kiana's mother smiled beside a small calabash holding water, a libation space where they honored her memory. As Kiana changed into her carefully selected outfit, dark jeans, a vintage Malcolm X t-shirt layered under an open button-down, her father prepared breakfast. The kitchen radio played the morning news, another shooting of an unarmed black man leading the headlines. You know the rules at Eastridge, Solomon said, sliding a plate of eggs and Johnny cakes before her. Keep your grades up. Stay out of trouble. And remember, I have to be twice as good to get half as much, Kiana finished, the familiar mantra of black parents everywhere rolling off her tongue. And watch your tone, he added. You know how to code switch when needed. Kiana nodded. The weight of these additional lessons, ones not taught to her white peers, settling on her shoulders. At 17, she already understood that her survival required mastering languages beyond her school subjects, when to amplify or diminish her blackness, when to swallow righteous anger, when her natural voice would be deemed too aggressive. I'm trying, Baba, but sometimes it feels like I'm erasing myself to make others comfortable. Solomon's eyes softened. I know, little warrior, but remember what Maya Angelou said. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. Kiana recited from memory. Her father smiled. Your mother would be so proud of the young woman you're becoming. The mention of her mother still created an ache in Kiana's chest, but now it came paired with pride. Anika Rhodes had been a community organizer, a martial artist, a fierce advocate for black education, and every day, Kiana worked to honor that legacy. Eastridge High School loomed before them, a sprawling brick building that served a more diverse population than Westfield Academy, though still predominantly white. As Kiana and her father walked toward the entrance, she felt the familiar weight of eyes tracking her movements, assessing, categorizing, making assumptions based on her skin tone and hairstyle before she'd spoken a single word. At the security checkpoint, the guard, a middle-aged white man with a receding hairline, barely glanced at the white students passing through. When Kiana approached, however, he held out his hand. "ID," he demanded sharply. "She's a new student," Solomon explained. "We're heading to the office to get her processed." The guard frowned. "I need to see some identification." "What's your name again?" "Kiana Rhodes," she answered, keeping her voice neutral despite the familiar burn of indignation. None of the white students had been stopped. "We have an appointment with Ms. Blackwell," Solomon added, his professional tone masking the protective edge Kiana recognized. This wasn't their first encounter with casual profiling. The guard reluctantly waved them through. As they walked away, Solomon squeezed Kiana's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the moment, a touch that said, "I know, I see it too, stay strong." In Ms. Blackwell's office, Kiana was surprised to find a black woman in her 50s with locks wrapped elegantly atop her head. Something in her stern expression softened momentarily upon seeing Kiana's braids and her father's Kent-pattern tie. "So, Ms. Rhodes," Ms. Blackwell said, examining the transfer papers, "I see you were expelled from Westfield for fighting. 3 boys were harassing another student. A black girl," Kiana replied, meeting the administrator's gaze directly. The school had ignored her complaints for months. A fleeting look of understanding crossed Ms. Blackwell's face before her professional mask returned. "I appreciate standing up for others, but at Eastridge, we have zero tolerance for violence. You understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." Ms. Blackwell handed Kiana her schedule. "I've assigned you a student ambassador to show you around today. He should be waiting outside." After signing the final paperwork, Solomon prepared to leave for his dojo. In the hallway, he pulled Kiana into a brief hug. "Remember who you are," he whispered. "Remember whose you are." "I will," she promised. As her father disappeared down the corridor, Kiana turned to find a slim boy with glasses and a nervous smile waiting by Ms. Blackwell's door. His appearance was a study in cautious neutrality: khakis, a plain button-down, hair cut close to his scalp. Only his rich brown skin and the subtle curve of his features hinted at his mixed heritage. "Hi, I'm Harris Patterson," he introduced himself, extending a hand formally. "I'll be showing you around today." Kiana shook his hand, noting his careful diction, the deliberate absence of any cultural markers in his speech or presentation. She recognized the strategy, another form of armor in predominantly white spaces. As Harris led her through the morning, pointing out classrooms and explaining schedules, Kiana observed the social landscape. Eastridge was more diverse than Westfield, but the segregation was still apparent. Black and brown students clustered together in the cafeteria. White students dominated the student council posters. The few Asian students formed their own small islands. During third period English, Kiana noticed a group of girls watching her, whispering behind manicured hands. Their leader, a blonde with expensive highlights and designer clothes, assessed Kiana with calculating eyes. As they exited class, the girl positioned herself directly in Kiana's path. "Love your hair," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Is it real? Can I touch it?" Before Kiana could respond, the girl's fingers were already reaching toward her braids. Kiana stepped back smoothly, a movement so practiced it appeared casual. "I don't let strangers touch me," she replied evenly. The girl's smile tightened. "I'm Victoria Maxwell, student council president, head of welcoming committee. Just trying to be friendly." Kiana Rhodes. "And friendly doesn't require touching my hair." A flash of annoyance crossed Victoria's features. "Well, excuse me for being interested in different cultures. I was just curious. You're so articulate, by the way. You must have gone to a good school before this." The microaggression hung in the air, but Kiana had navigated these waters her entire life. "Westfield Academy, actually. But I've been reading since I was 3, so articulation comes naturally." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly. "Westfield? Really? Scholarship program?" "No," Kiana replied, the word sharp as a blade. Harris appeared beside them, his posture tense. Kiana, we should get to chemistry. Mr. Patel doesn't like tardiness. As he guided her away, Kiana could feel Victoria's gaze burning into her back. That's Victoria Maxwell, Harris explained quietly. Her father's on the school board. She basically runs the social hierarchy here. And you? Kiana asked. Where do you fit? Harris gave a self-deprecating smile. Nowhere really. I'm the invisible kid with the perfect GPA who helps everyone with homework but doesn't get invited to parties. He adjusted his glasses. Being biracial doesn't help. Too black for some groups, not black enough for others. The honest assessment surprised Kiana. It was the first genuine moment she'd sensed from Harris, a brief dropping of his carefully constructed persona. By lunch period, Kiana had cataloged the usual high school factions: athletes, popular kids, theater geeks, stoners, with the added layer of racial dynamics shaping each group. Harris had disappeared to the library, leaving Kiana to navigate the cafeteria alone. She found a relatively empty table and unwrapped the lunch her father had packed, jollof rice and plantains in a thermos container. As she ate, she observed Victoria holding court at a central table, surrounded by an exclusively white entourage. After lunch, heading to her locker, Kiana heard raised voices from an adjacent hallway. Following the sound, she found Harris backed against the lockers, surrounded by 3 students. The largest, a white boy in a Letterman jacket, had his hand pressed against Harris's chest. Where's our physics homework, Patterson? The boy demanded. You promised it would be done today. I said I'd tutor you, Jackson, Harris replied, his voice surprisingly steady despite his obvious fear. Not that I'd do your work for you. Same difference, Jackson snapped, shoving Harris harder. My dad doesn't pay your mom's restaurant rent, so you can get smart with me. Please, just let me go, Harris said. I have a test next period. Victoria, standing slightly behind Jackson, examined her manicure with bored indifference. Maybe he needs motivation, she suggested. His backpack might have something valuable. The third student, another athlete type, grabbed Harris's backpack and upended it, scattering books and papers across the floor. Stop. Harris lunged for a weathered notebook. That's my grandmother's recipes. Jackson kicked the notebook down the hall, laughing as Harris scrambled after it. Should have thought about that before you decided to grow a backbone, Patterson. Kiana felt a familiar heat rising in her chest, her father's warnings echoing in her mind. Don't engage. Walk away. Report it later. She knew the script, knew that as a black girl, her intervention would be seen as aggression no matter how justified. But as Jackson raised his fist toward Harris, who was now clutching the recipe book to his chest, something in Kiana snapped. 3 against 1, she called out, her voice clear and controlled as she stepped into the hallway. Impressed with those odds. The trio turned, surprise registering as they took in the new face, the black girl with box braids and unflinching gaze. Who asked you? Victoria sneered. This doesn't concern you. I'm making it my concern, Kiana replied, pulling out her phone and beginning to record. School policy about bullying is pretty clear, isn't it? I wonder how this video would look to the school board. Or your father, Victoria. Jackson's face darkened with anger. Give me that phone. Now. He stepped toward Kiana, fist clenched. Jackson, don't, Harris warned, but it was too late. Jackson's punch came fast, but Kiana was faster. Time seemed to slow as she caught his fist midair, her grip firm enough to stop his momentum, but controlled enough not to harm. The hallway fell silent, shock rippling across faces as this new black girl held her ground. In that crystallized moment, Kiana saw it all. How quickly their eyes shifted from seeing a protector to labeling her the aggressor, how her blackness transformed her defense into threat. The calculus was familiar. A black girl standing her ground would always be read as the angry instigator, regardless of who threw the first punch. What happened next would change everything. What happened next surprised even Kiana. Instead of pushing back or escalating, she shifted her stance slightly, redirecting Jackson's momentum so he stumbled forward, off balance but unhurt. The move, a basic Aikido principle her father taught as receive, redirect, release, Defuse the physical threat without creating a new one. Touch me or Harris again, Kiana said evenly. And the video goes straight to the principal. And the local news. Jackson straightened, face flushed with humiliation. You've made a serious mistake. Do you even know who I am? Someone who needs 3 people to feel brave enough to attack one. Kiana replied, moving to stand beside Harris. Not very impressive. Victoria stepped forward, placing a manicured hand on Jackson's arm. Let's go. She's not worth it. Her eyes narrowed at Kiana. Welcome to Eastridge. You'll learn how things work here soon enough. As the trio retreated, muttering threats, Harris stared at Kiana with a mixture of awe and alarm. You shouldn't have done that, he said, kneeling to gather his scattered belongings. They're going to make your life miserable now. Kiana helped collect his papers. Seems like they were already making yours miserable. I'm used to it, he shrugged, carefully smoothing the creases in the recipe notebook. Been dealing with them since freshman year. Well, I'm not used to walking away when someone needs help, Kiana replied, handing him a textbook. My father says ignoring injustice makes you complicit in it. Harris studied her for a moment. Thank you. Seriously. But we should probably get out of here before they come back with reinforcements. The rest of the day passed without incident, though Kiana noticed the whispers that followed her through the hallways. By final period, rumors had already morphed the confrontation into something more dramatic. She'd flipped Jackson over her shoulder. She'd threatened the entire group with martial arts moves. She'd been recruited by a rival gang from the east side. As Kiana headed for the bus stop after school, Harris jogged to catch up with her. Hey, he called, slightly out of breath. Where'd you learn to move like that? That wasn't just instinct. My father runs a dojo near Crescent Heights, Kiana replied, continuing to walk. I've been training since I could walk. Could you? Harris hesitated. Could you teach me? Just some basics. For self-defense. Kiana stopped, turning to face him fully. Why not join my father's classes? He's the real master. Harris looked away. I can't afford formal classes. My mom and I barely make rent on the restaurant as it is. Something in his expression, the familiar calculations of making do with less, resonated with Kiana. What kind of restaurant? Soul food, mainly, with some Filipino dishes mixed in. My grandmother was black, grandfather Filipino. Mom keeps their recipes alive. Pride colored his voice for the first time. It's called Alma's Place, after my mom. Kiana felt a connection forming, tentative but genuine. Tell you what, come to the dojo tomorrow after school. I'll talk to my father. Maybe we can work something out. The following afternoon, Kiana led Harris through the streets of Crescent Heights, a predominantly black and immigrant neighborhood that contrasted sharply with Eastridge's manicured lawns. Children played double dutch on sidewalks. Elders sat on porches exchanging neighborhood news. Murals celebrating African-American history brightened building walls. I've never really spent time in this neighborhood, Harris admitted, looking around with curious eyes. Why not? Isn't your mother black? Harris nodded, discomfort evident in his posture. Yeah, but we've always lived closer to the Filipino side of my family. After my dad left, we kind of lost connection with my mom's relatives. He paused. Plus, I don't exactly fit in. I'm not black enough for some people. Kiana recognized the pain of cultural displacement in his words. Being black isn't a performance or a checklist, Harris. It's heritage, history, connection, not how you talk or dress or whether you know all the cultural references. They turned onto a street lined with small businesses, a barber shop, a Caribbean grocery, a community center, and finally, East Side Warriors Dojo. The weathered sign featured both Japanese kanji and Adinkra symbols from Ghana. Inside, the space radiated cultural fusion. Traditional tatami mats covered the floor, but African drums sat alongside Japanese bamboo flutes. Photos of martial arts masters from various traditions, Japanese, Chinese, Senegalese, Nigerian, adorned the walls. At the back, a small altar held offerings. Incense, water, fresh fruit, and photos of ancestors, including one of a beautiful woman with Kiana's eyes and smile. Solomon Rhodes was instructing a group of young children, mostly black and brown, ranging from 5 to 10 years old, in basic stances. He moved with fluid precision despite his powerful build, his voice gentle but commanding. Feet solid like your ancestors' determination, he was saying. Hands ready to both protect and create. He demonstrated a blocking position. This movement exists in both karate and in Dam. Different continents, same human wisdom. When he spotted Kiana and Harris, he nodded acknowledgement but continued the lesson. Kiana guided Harris to a bench to watch. My father believes martial arts isn't just about fighting techniques, she explained quietly. It's about history, philosophy, connecting to cultures of resistance. After class ended and the children dispersed, many hugged by waiting parents who greeted Solomon with respectful familiarity. Kiana made introductions. Baba, this is Harris Patterson from school. He wants to learn self-defense. Solomon studied Harris with assessing eyes that missed nothing. His careful posture, his deliberately neutral clothing, the nervousness in his expression. Why do you want to learn? He asked directly. Harris hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Honestly, I'm tired of being pushed around. My mom works late at our restaurant, and sometimes drunks come in and cause trouble. Last month, one guy refused to pay and shoved me when I confronted him. He pushed up his sleeve, revealing a fading bruise. I couldn't do anything to stop him. Solomon nodded slowly. Training here isn't just about learning to throw punches. We study traditions from across the African diaspora as well as East Asia. The discipline is spiritual and cultural as much as physical. I understand, sir. And we operate on exchange rather than just payment. Some students pay money. Others help clean the dojo, assist with younger classes, or contribute skills. Harris brightened. I could bring food from our restaurant. Or help with bookkeeping. I'm good with numbers. We'll figure something out, Solomon said, his expression warming. For today, you can join Kiana's advanced class. Just observe what you can. Over the following weeks, Harris became a fixture at the dojo. What he lacked in natural athletic ability, he made up for in analytical precision and determination. He absorbed Solomon's cultural teachings with the same hunger he showed for fighting techniques, asking questions about the African traditions that formed part of the dojo's philosophy. One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Solomon invited Harris to stay for dinner, a Friday tradition when Kiana's aunt, uncle, and cousins joined them. I should call my mom first, Harris said, suddenly self-conscious. She worries. Invite her too, Solomon offered. There's always plenty. The small apartment above the dojo transformed that evening with the warmth of family gathering. Aunt Latrice arrived with her husband Marcus and their twin daughters, bringing sweet potato pie and laughter. Harris and his mother Alma, a striking woman with kind eyes and an elegant bearing despite her obvious exhaustion, were welcomed without hesitation. The dinner table overflowed with food: oxtail stew, jollof rice, greens, cornbread, and to Alma's delight, a Filipino pancit dish she recognized immediately. Kiana helped make it, Solomon explained. She found a recipe and wanted to honor your family's traditions too. Conversation flowed easily, punctuated by stories and gentle teasing. Before eating, Solomon poured a small libation, honoring ancestors and setting an intention of gratitude for the meal. In our tradition, he explained to Harris and Alma, we recognize that we're never dining alone. Those who came before us are always present at our table. As the evening progressed, Kiana observed Harris gradually relaxing, laughing genuinely at her uncle's jokes, asking questions about family photos, his carefully constructed, acceptable persona giving way to something more authentic. When Alma mentioned her struggle to keep the restaurant afloat with rising rents, Aunt Latrice immediately offered to connect her with the Black Business Association for support resources. When Harris shyly shared his dream of becoming a doctor, Uncle Marcus, a hospital administrator, offered to arrange a shadowing opportunity at his workplace. This is what community feels like, Kiana's young cousin Maya declared with childish wisdom as they shared dessert. Everybody helping everybody. Later, as they cleaned up in the kitchen, Alma approached Kiana with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said softly. It's been a long time since Harris and I felt this belonging. After his father left, I think I tried to make things easier for Harris by downplaying his blackness, thinking it would help him fit in at school. She shook her head. I was wrong. I cut him off from half his heritage, from the strength of community like this. It's never too late to reconnect, Kiana replied, thinking of her own journey after losing her mother. If you've ever felt the pressure to be twice as good, just to be treated equally, or struggled with embracing your full cultural identity, share your journey in the comments below. Your experiences matter in this community we're building together. And if these stories of cultural strength and resilience speak to you, hit that subscribe button right now to join us in celebrating our complex, beautiful heritage. At school, dynamics were shifting. Harris walked taller now, his posture reflecting his growing confidence. He'd started wearing subtle Kent patterns on his backpack, a small reclamation of heritage that didn't go unnoticed. Kiana had gradually formed connections with other Black students who'd previously kept their distance, drawn by her unapologetic pride and Harris's visible transformation. But as their circle widened, so did Victoria's resentment. The microaggressions escalated, jokes about affirmative action when Kiana scored highest on an English essay, comments about her hair being unprofessional during class presentations, pointed exclusion from student council activities despite Kiana's qualifications. One morning, Kiana arrived to find her locker vandalized. Someone had written, "Go back to where you came from," in permanent marker. As she stood staring at the words, a tall Asian American student approached. "That's messed up," he said, genuine anger in his voice. "Want me to get the janitor? Mr. Wilson has stuff that removes marker." "Thanks," Kiana replied, studying him. "You're Dominic Chen, right? Victoria's boyfriend." He winced. "Ex-boyfriend, thankfully. I'm done with that whole scene." He extended his hand. "You're Kiana, the one who shut down Jackson that day." As the janitor cleaned her locker, Dominic explained his recent epiphany. "I've been boxing since I was 8. My coach always said winning meant making others fear you." His expression darkened. "Last year, I broke a kid's jaw in a street fight. A Black kid who looked at my girlfriend wrong. Victoria cheered me on." He met Kiana's eyes directly. "When I saw how you handled Jackson, neutralizing the threat without causing harm, I realized there's another way to be strong. Plus," he hesitated, "I've been thinking a lot about how I've been complicit in Victoria's racism just by staying silent." "Silence is comfortable," Kiana acknowledged. "Standing up isn't. That's why I wanted to ask." Dominic looked uncharacteristically uncertain. "I've seen you and Harris training after school sometimes, in the park. Could I join you? Learn what you're learning." That afternoon, Dominic became the newest addition to Eastside Warriors Dojo. Solomon welcomed him with the same question he asked all students. "Why do you want to learn?" "I know how to hurt people," Dominic answered honestly. "I need to learn how not to." As weeks passed, an unlikely friendship formed between the three students. Harris excelled at the philosophical aspects of training, often making connections between different cultural traditions. Dominic brought his boxing discipline, teaching Kiana and Harris techniques to incorporate into their practice. Kiana shared her deep knowledge of both martial arts forms and cultural history, stepping into a teaching role that came naturally to her. After training sessions, they often gathered at Alma's Place restaurant, which was gradually becoming a community hub. Solomon had connected Alma with local Black farmers for ingredients. Aunt Latrice had helped her secure a small business grant, and customer traffic had increased as word spread about her unique fusion cuisine. One evening, as they shared a meal at the restaurant, Kiana noticed Harris watching her with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You never talk about your mom," he said gently. "All these weeks at your house. I've seen her picture, but you never mention her." Kiana froze, the familiar ache rising in her chest. Dominic, sensing the tension, started to change the subject, but Kiana surprised herself by speaking. "She died 3 years ago. Breast cancer." The words felt rusty and used. "She was the heart of our family, of the whole neighborhood really. Community organizer, activist, second mother to half the kids at the dojo." She touched the necklace she always wore, a small pendant of an Adinkra symbol. This was hers. Sankofa. It means go back and get it. The wisdom of learning from the past. Tell us about her, Harris encouraged softly. Kiana closed her eyes briefly, memories washing over her. She had the most beautiful locks, down to her waist. Every Sunday night was our ritual. She'd wash my hair, oil my scalp, teach me about our ancestors while her hands worked. She said hair care was self-love in a world that didn't always love our bodies. The memories came easier now, flowing like a river finding its natural path. She met my father in a protest for police accountability. They both got arrested, spent the night in jail talking about martial arts philosophy and liberation movements. A smile touched Kiana's lips. Dad says he knew she was the one when she quoted both Malcolm X and Bruce Lee in the same sentence. She sounds amazing, Dominic said. She was. After she got sick, she made me promise two things: to never diminish myself to make others comfortable, and to use my strength to protect, not punish. Kiana's voice caught. Sometimes those promises feel at odds with each other. Harris reached across the table, his hand covering hers. I think you're honoring both pretty well. The moment of connection was interrupted by the restaurant door bursting open. A tall black man in expensive clothes strode in, followed by two intimidating associates. Conversations hushed as heads turned toward the disruption. Preston King, Dominic muttered. Local gang leader. Bad news. Alma approached the group with professional courtesy, but Kiana could see tension in her shoulders. Table for three? She asked. Preston surveyed the restaurant slowly, his gaze lingering on Kiana, Harris, and Dominic before returning to Alma. Just checking out the competition. Heard there's a new place taking customers from my aunt's restaurant down on Maple. We're not competition for anyone, Alma replied carefully. Just a small family business. Preston smiled without warmth. Family business. I respect that. We're a family business too, in our way. He picked up a menu, examined it briefly, then dropped it back on the counter. Nice place. Would be a shame if anything happened to it. The threat hung in the air as Preston and his associates departed, leaving a chill in their wake. What was that about? Kiana asked. Harris's face had gone pale. Protection racket. He's been targeting small businesses in this area, demanding payments for security. He looked toward his mother, who was trying to reassure nervous customers. Mom's been approached before, but refused to pay. Has he threatened you directly? Dominic asked. Not until now, Harris replied. But last month, a restaurant that refused him had a mysterious kitchen fire. Kiana felt the familiar heat of anger rising. We should go to the police. With what evidence? Harris sighed. Besides, some officers are on his payroll. Mom's filed reports before. Nothing happens. As they discussed options, Kiana's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Victoria sends her regards. Surprised to see you slumming in this neighborhood. A chill ran down Kiana's spine as she showed the others. Victoria is connected to Preston? Dominic's expression darkened. I've suspected for a while. She started wearing expensive jewelry she couldn't explain, making cryptic comments about her business connections. I think Preston's been recruiting at Eastridge, using students like Victoria to expand his operation into the suburbs. And now they know about Alma's place, about our connection here. Kiana said, the implications clear. That night, alone in her room, Kiana couldn't sleep. The threats against Harris's family restaurant, the escalating tensions at school, Victoria's increasingly bold racism, it all swirled in her mind alongside her promise to her mother about using strength wisely. She pulled out her journal, a practice her mother had encouraged, and opened to an entry from years ago, written in her mother's handwriting. My dearest Kiana, never forget that our ancestors faced impossible choices and still chose dignity. They resisted in ways big and small, sometimes with open defiance, sometimes with quiet subversion, always with the hope that we would live to see better days. Your strength comes from them, flows through you like a river of memory. When the world tries to make you forget who you are, remember, you are their wildest dream come true. Kiana traced her mother's handwriting, feeling her presence as clearly as if she sat beside her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices between action and restraint. But tonight, In the quiet darkness of her room, surrounded by the wisdom of ancestors, Kiana felt a certainty crystallizing within her. Some battles couldn't be avoided, only faced with the full force of one's heritage and truth. The following morning, Kiana found Harris waiting at her locker, his face tight with worry. "Mom got a call last night," he said without preamble. "Someone threatened to teach her a lesson about respecting business arrangements. Then they mentioned you and the dojo." He swallowed hard. "They know where you live, Kiana." Before she could respond, Miss Blackwell appeared beside them. "Ms. Rhodes, a word in my office, please." The administrator's expression revealed nothing as they walked in silence to her office. Inside, she closed the door and motioned for Kiana to sit. "There's been an accusation," Ms. Blackwell began, her voice carefully neutral. "Victoria Maxwell claims you threatened her yesterday, said you would, and I quote, beat her up if she didn't stay away from your territory." "What? That's absurd. I wasn't even near Victoria yesterday. She has witnesses. Jackson Miller and 2 other students have signed statements." The familiar pattern crystallized with painful clarity. White tears weaponized. Black girl automatically presumed guilty. But something in Ms. Blackwell's measured tone gave Kiana pause. "You don't believe them," she realized. Ms. Blackwell removed her glasses, suddenly looking less like an administrator and more like a woman who'd navigated similar waters. "What I believe is that Victoria Maxwell has made 3 similar accusations against students of color in the past 2 years. What I know is that she's never faced consequences for proven incidents of bullying." She leaned forward. "What I suspect is that something bigger is happening, and you're caught in the middle." "Preston King," Kiana said, "the pieces connecting. Victoria's working with him. They're targeting Harris's family restaurant and my father's dojo." Ms. Blackwell's expression changed. "Preston King is dangerous, Kiana. If he's involved, this isn't just school politics anymore." She wrote something on a notepad, then slid it across the desk. "This detective handled a case at my church last year. Gang intimidation of local businesses. He's one of the good ones." Kiana stared at the name and number. "Why are you helping me?" "Because 20 years ago, I was you." Ms. Blackwell's voice softened. The angry black girl who wasn't actually angry, just unwilling to be diminished. Who fought back when no one else would. She straightened, professional demeanor returning. "Officially, I've warned you about making threats. Unofficially, be careful. Document everything. And know you're not alone." Throughout the day, tension seemed to thicken the air. Victoria and her group watched Kiana from across classrooms and hallways, their expressions triumphant. During lunch, Dominic found Kiana and Harris huddled at their usual table. "Victoria's bragging about getting you suspended," he reported, sliding into a seat. "Says it's happening tomorrow. And there's more. I overheard her on the phone with Preston. They're planning something tonight." "What kind of something?" Harris asked, fear evident in his voice. "Some kind of initiation for Victoria and Jackson into Preston's crew. She mentioned your mom's restaurant and making examples." Kiana felt cold determination replace her anxiety. "We need to be ready. Harris, call your mom. Tell her to close early tonight. Get somewhere safe." "She won't," Harris replied, frustration edging his voice. "Thursday night is her best business. She'll say we can't let threats dictate our lives. Then we'll be there instead," Kiana decided. "All of us. My father too." "That's exactly what they want," Dominic warned. "To draw you out. Escalate this into something physical." Kiana's hand went instinctively to the Sankofa pendant at her throat. "My mother used to say sometimes you have to rise to the moment that finds you. We'll be smart about this. But we're not hiding." That evening, Eastside Warriors Dojo closed early. Solomon Rhodes made calls to community elders, former students, and neighborhood business owners, activating networks of support built over decades. By nightfall, the apparently casual presence of community members had increased throughout the neighborhood. Domino players on stoops, teenagers shooting hoops at the corner court, elders rocking on porches, all with phones ready and eyes alert. At Alma's place, business proceeded as usual, though several tables were occupied by Solomon's most trusted adult students. Kiana, Harris, and Dominic positioned themselves at a corner table with clear views of both entrances. Alma moved between tables with practiced ease, her warm smile betraying no hint of the tension thrumming beneath the surface. At precisely 9 o'clock, two black SUVs pulled up outside. Preston King emerged from the first, followed by Victoria and Jackson. From the second vehicle, 4 more young men appeared, all wearing the distinctive red bandanas that marked Preston's crew. "Everyone stay calm," Solomon murmured from his position near the counter. "Let them make the first move." The bell over the door chimed as Preston entered, surveying the restaurant with calculated nonchalance. His eyes narrowed slightly at the number of people present, but his confident smirk remained fixed. "Nice place," he commented, approaching Alma. "Busy night. We're blessed with loyal customers." Alma replied evenly. "Can I help you with a table?" Preston laughed. "I'm not here to eat, Miss Patterson. I'm here to conclude our business discussion." He gestured toward Victoria and Jackson, who had positioned themselves near the door. "My associates here need to complete an assignment to join our organization. Simple, really, just a message about respecting certain arrangements in this neighborhood." Solomon stepped forward. "Whatever message you have can be delivered to me, Mr. King. I'm Solomon Rhodes, a friend of the Patterson family." The dojo owner, Preston nodded. "Convenient. 2 birds, 1 stone." He turned back to Alma. "Here's the situation, simple and clear. This neighborhood operates under certain understandings. Protection costs money. You haven't been contributing. We don't need your protection," Alma stated firmly. "Everyone needs protection," Preston replied, his voice hardening. "Otherwise, unfortunate accidents happen. Kitchen fires, broken windows, health code violations mysteriously reported." Kiana watched Victoria's eager expression as she observed Preston's intimidation tactics. A white girl playing at being a gangster, fetishizing black crime culture while facing none of the systemic barriers that created it. The realization crystallized Kiana's resolve. She stood, moving to stand beside Harris's mother. "This ends now," she said, her voice carrying throughout the now silent restaurant. "Your threats, your intimidation, none of it works here." Preston's eyes narrowed. "The karate girl. I was hoping you'd join our conversation." He smiled coldly. "Victoria has told me so much about you. The angry black girl causing trouble, fighting in school. Couldn't stay out of trouble at Westfield, can't stay out of trouble here." "That's not who I am," Kiana replied steadily. "That's who Victoria needs me to be to justify her hatred, to make her feel powerful." Victoria stepped forward, her designer clothes and manicured nails a stark contrast to the setting. "You don't belong at Eastridge. You never did. Always acting superior, turning Harris against his real friends, thinking you're special." "Special?" Kiana laughed without humor. "I've spent my life being told I need to be twice as good to get half as much. That I need to straighten my hair, soften my voice, shrink myself to be acceptable. That my anger isn't justified, my pain isn't real, my achievements must be from quotas rather than merit." She looked Victoria directly in the eyes. "I'm not special. I'm just done pretending to be less than I am to make people like you comfortable." Preston's amused expression faltered slightly. "Very inspiring, but ultimately irrelevant. This isn't about race or feelings. It's business." He snapped his fingers, and his associates moved toward the kitchen area. A small demonstration of what happens when businesses don't cooperate. "I wouldn't," Solomon advised calmly. He nodded toward the windows, where several people on the street now stood watching, phones raised and recording. This community protects its own. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Preston's face, but he recovered quickly. Community won't save you when accidents happen in the middle of the night. Actually, a new voice spoke from the doorway. Communities are precisely what stops cycles of intimidation. Detective Williams entered, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Behind them, Ms. Blackwell stood with an evidence folder in hand. "Preston King," the detective began, "we've been building a case on your protection racket for months. Tonight's activities, conveniently documented by about 15 community members, provide the final evidence we needed." As realization dawned, Victoria's confident demeanor collapsed. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered. "I'm not involved in anything illegal. I was just..." just participating in organized criminal intimidation. Ms. Blackwell finished, her tone icy. Just using your privilege to enable targeting of minority-owned businesses? She held up the folder. Your text messages with Preston make your role quite clear. The school board, including your father, has been provided copies. The next hour passed in a blur of statements, arrests, and shocked recriminations. Preston and his associates were taken into custody, while Victoria and Jackson were released to their parents with warnings about potential charges. Throughout it all, the community members who had gathered to protect Alma's place remained, their presence a living demonstration of collective power. This moment shows how strength comes from embracing your identity and community. If you found power in connecting with your roots or standing in your truth, hit that like button right now. Tag someone who helped you embrace your culture and heritage in the comments below. Let's celebrate those who guide us back to ourselves. And don't forget to subscribe to see more stories of cultural resilience. In the days that followed, ripples of change spread through both Eastridge High and the neighborhood around Alma's place. Victoria's father, humiliated by his daughter's actions, resigned from the school board. The subsequent investigation revealed patterns of racial bias in disciplinary actions and resource allocation that had gone unchallenged for years. Ms. Blackwell, with support from the superintendent, implemented a comprehensive cultural competency program, with Kiana, Harris, and Dominic serving as student advisors. Kiana found herself leading discussions about microaggressions and code switching that opened eyes and changed perspectives among students who had never considered these daily realities. At Alma's place, business flourished as community support transformed into customer loyalty. Harris worked alongside his mother, creating new menu items that celebrated both sides of his heritage, the recipes a bridge connecting him to traditions he'd nearly lost. The restaurant became a gathering space for community events, poetry nights, and cultural celebrations. Eastside Warriors Dojo expanded its youth program, with Solomon offering free classes to children from the neighborhood. Kiana, now his official assistant instructor, specialized in teaching young Black girls, incorporating lessons about cultural pride alongside self-defense techniques. Strong body, strong mind, strong spirit, she would tell them, echoing her father's teachings. Our strength comes from knowing who we are and whose we are. Dominic, transformed by his experiences, channeled his leadership abilities into organizing an ally training program at Eastridge. Being an ally isn't about guilt or savior complexes, he explained to predominantly white students. It's about recognizing systems of privilege and using your position to dismantle them. 3 months later, on a warm spring evening, Alma's Place hosted a community celebration, part restaurant anniversary, part neighborhood unity festival. Tables spilled onto the sidewalk, where Solomon's youngest students performed demonstrations alongside dancers from the community center. Elders shared stories with teenagers, Ms. Blackwell chatted with parents, and the air filled with music ranging from soul classics to hip-hop. Kiana found a quiet moment with Harris near the small stage where a local jazz band was setting up. My acceptance letter from Howard University came yesterday, she told him, excitement barely contained in her voice. Full scholarship, pre-law program. Harris's face lit up. That's amazing, Kiana. That was your mother's school, right? Her dream for me. Kiana touched her Sankofa pendant. What about you? Heard from any colleges? Georgetown and Howard both accepted me for pre-med, he replied, a hint of wonder in his voice. Still waiting on financial aid packages, but Mom's restaurant is doing well enough now that she thinks we can manage. Howard, Kiana raised an eyebrow. You never mentioned applying there. A slight blush colored Harris's cheeks. I want to study cultural approaches to medicine. Howard has an amazing program combining Western medical training with traditional healing practices from the African diaspora. Kiana felt warmth spreading through her chest. Harris had changed so much from the careful, culturally disconnected boy she'd met months ago. He now wore his heritage openly. A Kent cloth bow tie adorned his collar tonight, his mother's recipe journal tucked confidently in his pocket. We could be at the same school, she said softly. I was hoping that might factor into my decision. Harris admitted, gathering his courage to take her hand. Their fingers interlaced as Alma called everyone's attention to the makeshift stage. Solomon stood beside her, raising a glass. To community, he toasted. To the strength we find in each other. To knowing where we've been and where we're going. Ash, the crowd responded, glasses raised in unified affirmation. As twilight deepened into evening, lanterns illuminated the celebration. Kiana watched her father teaching elders and children alike a traditional dance, saw Dominic earnestly discussing community investment with local business owners, noticed Ms. Blackwell sharing stories with rap teenagers. This, she realized, was what her mother had meant by using strength to protect rather than punish. Building spaces where people could stand in their full truth, where heritage became power, where the wisdom of ancestors flowed into new generations. Harris squeezed her hand gently. What are you thinking about? You look miles away. Kiana smiled, returning to the present moment. Just that sometimes the battles we think we're fighting aren't the ones that matter most. She looked around at the vibrant gathering. Sometimes victory isn't defeating enemies, but creating something they can't tear down. Like community, Harris nodded. Like us. Like us, Kiana agreed, and let herself lean, just slightly, into the promise of that future. If this story touched you or inspired you in any way, please hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss our next powerful narrative. Leave a comment sharing how your cultural heritage has shaped your strength and identity. Your voice matters in this community we're building together. Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember, our greatest power comes from embracing who we are and whose we are. Our ancestors' dreams live through us every time we stand in our truth.